got a round. This is a real round
This is
table.
actually a real round table.
We're like the Knights back in the old days.
Yeah.
Talking, we'll have a lot to talk about in college football this past week. Arguably, we were talking one of the best weeks in first week in college football history, I would say. But let's talk high school ball. We'll start with Coffee County. Lost to Smyrna. I think Zach, you predicted that would probably happen, 56-10. Next, they play Walker Valley. What are you seeing about that?
That's going to be a more favorable matchup for Coffee County. Walker Valley is a good, solid team up there from Cleveland, but I think Coffee County with Alante Taylor might be able to cut into that and get some big plays and be able to get on the board. So I anticipate that being a close one. Against Smyrna last week, they struggled with turnovers. Alante threw 2 interceptions, and then the other quarterback, Prater, and I can't remember his first name off the top of my head, he also threw an interception. So that just killed them against a good Smyrna football team who's probably playing the best football out of everybody in the state right now. So I think this matchup against Walker Valley, especially getting that they're going to be hosting the game, I think that's going to help them out.
Yeah, it is at home. Let's talk about Franklin County. So I think you had said maybe last week, I may be wrong, that Stewart's Creek was one of the best 1 and 2 teams or something.
Yeah, Coach Smith has said they were one of the best 0-2 teams. They have yet to win a game, losing to Overton and to Smyrna, and pretty bad losses. They really did impress me, to be honest. The score was 27-0, but the score was not an indication of how good of a game it really was. I just spoke with Coach Perry with Mount Juliet, and he reiterated the same thing. Looking at film, he said the same thing. They forced 4 turnovers for Stewart's Creek. They kept it to 1 score up until the 3rd quarter, and the defense has basically played out. I mean, the thing Franklin County faces right now is kind of the same thing as Tullahoma. There's no depth. You know, a bunch of young guys are basically having to stay in the entire game. So they go up against Mount Juliet this week, who's also 1 and 2, same as at home. Had a really good crowd come out last week. Hope to see a good crowd this week, because I think that is a game changer. You know, Coach Smith wants them.
Oklahoma's going to have a tough time against Marshall County, Zach.
And they did.
And they did. It was 55-7 home this week, right?
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting matchup. Shelbyville is coming off of a 71-34 loss to Summit last week, so the defense is kind of lacking for Shelbyville. Apparently,
Summit's not a big school.
But Summit's on the rise
but
this year.
Summit is on the rise.
Yes.
You can see that last year. I covered the Franklin County Summit game last year and got a chance to see Summit up close, and you can see that there were little good things that were starting to develop for Summit.
What size is Summit? Are they in 3A or 4A?
I believe
4.
they're 4A.
Yeah. I had the
off the
coach's
top of
name.
my head, I couldn't remember.
They made the big podcast for the Tennessee and was talking about them, what a program that they're building down there, up there.
Well, so against Shelbyville, what do you think?
This is going to be I honestly, this is one of those that I have no idea what I was actually quite happy with their performance. They didn't back down. Marshall County was definitely the number 3 ranked team in the state for a reason. You know, it was 27-0 at halftime, only 27-0, but at the end of the 3rd quarter, it was 55-7. So it was all but over then. I mean, it's just little things. I mean, you can look at that score and say, well, Tullahoma didn't do anything, did they? Except for get 1 touchdown. No, they had sporadically big plays here and there against Marshall County's defense. They just couldn't do anything with it. Yeah, they'd hit a big 30-yard pass. Couldn't do anything with it. Get down to the 15-yard line. Can't score it. So it's just a matter of putting things together. And against Shelbyville, whose defense obviously is lacking right now, I think they might be able to put up some points. Now, whether or not that's enough to get a win, I have no idea.
Well, you gotta crawl before you can walk.
Franklin County game, who's going to win?
Oh, well, I think Mount Juliet will pull it out. Though I think if Franklin County could get anything going offensively, that it could provide an interesting game. I'd love to see them win.
Tullahoma game, who do you think's going to win?
I think Shelbyville's going to edge them out, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay. Glad I don't have to have a pick in that fight. All right, let's move on to college football. We'll talk real quick about last week's picks. Joe 6-3, Zach 6-3, Callie 5-4.
Only 1 loss compared to y'all, so I think I did okay. I don't know why I picked UCLA over A&M. I don't know what I was thinking.
I don't know what you were thinking. No, you didn't pick UCLA. You picked Texas A&M.
Oh, okay, good. Because I saw K up there, and I was like, well, this seems
That was one of
uncharacteristic
yours.
of
You
me.
picked Georgia and we picked North Carolina.
And then I picked Ole Miss over Florida State, which if they'd actually played a second half, they would have won that game. But they didn't show up second half. So.
Well, I think that's what kills you, though. You play that fast-paced offense.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you know, you're 3 and out a couple of times.
They
Your
rattled
defense is
Kelly
offense.
a little bit. I think he came
Well, I
out
thought
hot
he
and
was
heavy.
the best quarterback. I thought he was the proclaimed. He said he was the proclaimed
Well, that's what I
best
said. Yeah, he
quarterback
was talking a lot of smack, and he got rattled, and he
Yeah.
wasn't able to come back from it.
Good games last week. Texas, the Texas Notre Dame game, that was great.
Yeah, definitely a fight to the finish.
Yeah.
Georgia, North Carolina was a really good game, fight to the finish. on that
LSU,
one.
Wisconsin.
Yeah.
You know, arguably one of the worst weeks in SEC first game ever.
Yeah.
I think those SEC teams are rethinking their scheduling of the first game.
Especially playing,
Especially
it's-
it's Mississippi State, with
Oh,
that
yeah,
FCS school.
right?
well, TCU struggled with
Yeah, South Dakota,
So,
yeah.
There was a lot of teams with Tennessee and Appalachian.
Yeah, but that
Appalachian.
11-2 team, ranked defensively and offensively.
Well, maybe even last week we underestimated them.
I
but-
think that I think the coaches were definitely playing conservatively. They figured they could play it about 20%, and then they squeak by them.
I'm gonna tell you what. If I was a coach or something, somebody'd be fired on Friday morning. I'd almost have to make a point.
But it's first game of the season.
Yeah,
you're basically
and
working
whenever you
out.
play against some of those smaller schools like Appalachian State, you wonder how much a school like Tennessee was willing to tip their hand.
Exactly.
That was my
Thank you,
question.
Zach.
Is how much did they actually want to tip their hand in this game? Sure, you got your set plays that you want to execute, but were they treating this more like it was a quote unquote scrimmage? Like for high school football, they don't show what they typically got. So
Yeah.
they just hold that back into the regular
Exactly.
season. So I was wondering if Tennessee might be doing a little bit
Well,
of
we're
that
gonna
in that
hope
game.
that that's exactly what they were doing, because 150,000 people are gonna show up on Saturday
Yeah.
night, and if they lose, it's gonna be the longest ride home
And
in the history
let's
of
go
football.
to picks real quick, and then I actually want to talk a little bit about the coaches poll and the AP poll. Speaking of the battle at Bristol, the largest football game, college football game, probably pro football game, doesn't matter, largest football game in history is what it's going to be.
Yes.
Tennessee plays Virginia Tech in a neutral area, so it should be fairly neutral. So who do you think's going to win that game?
I like Tennessee in this one. I really think they were holding back last week. So I think Virginia Tech still got a lot of question marks under a first-year head coach in Justin Fuente.
Now, if we played him next year, I'd be a little bit more worried.
Yeah.
He's a good coach. He's gonna do well for that program.
Yeah, I agree. I think
So
he's
who you
a
got?
tremendous coach.
Tennessee,
Of course.
of course.
I'm going to go outside the box, and I'm going with Tennessee. No, I kind of agree with you guys. After looking at Virginia Tech, they struggled last week a little bit against
Liberty.
Yeah, against
Yeah.
Liberty, and I'm kind of like you. I don't think Tennessee wanted to show everything they had in their hat.
Sure.
This could be an interesting game. This is basically a home game for both teams. MTSU at Vandy, but seriously, it's really a home game. For
Yeah.
both teams.
I'm gonna pick MTSU with that 55-0
That was
win
an
over
impressive-
Alabama and A&M. I think MTSU will.
Can put
I
some
like
points
them
on
in
the
this.
board.
Yeah, I like them in this.
I don't know.
Guess
Something just tells me to pick Vandy in this one, so I'm going Vandy. I think this is a toss-em-up game, really. But
Yeah.
I kind of feel the same way you do. However, I'm like you. MTSU can score some points,
Yeah.
and I think they're going to. And I don't
Now,
think
who
Vandy
won
can.
last? Did they play last year against
Oh.
one another?
Yes,
Yes.
and
Okay,
Vandy
Vandy.
ended up winning at
Okay.
MTSU.
Okay.
But it was close.
It was close.
Yeah.
So I am actually going with MTSU. Go Blue Raiders. Our producer will be happy about
Yeah,
that. He's over there
exactly.
smiling right now. This might be an interesting game. South Carolina, Mississippi State.
Yeah, it will be an interesting game.
What about Mississippi State's loss?
Yeah, Mississippi
Yes.
State is coming off of a loss last week to South Alabama.
Alabama.
So, kind of needed to recover. They need to recover. I don't think they will recover. I
No.
think South Carolina, is good enough defensively.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Actually, we can agree on. And I hate to overrule Muschamp, but I'm gonna do it because it's a smart decision.
I agree with you. I think South Carolina's still struggling. Mississippi State, once again, maybe they didn't want to tip their hat, but until they show me something, I'm going to have to go with South Carolina on that one. I think this might be one of the games of the week. Arkansas, which really isn't ranked right now, but we all know is a pretty good team,
Yeah.
is at TCU, who struggled last week.
Yeah, they did against South Dakota.
And, you know, Arkansas is a good, strong offensive run team.
I feel like they're the Tennessee of the West. That's what I call
So
them.
who do you think then?
I'm going to say Arkansas because I like my SEC boys. It may not be the smartest pick because TCU is what, still ranked, right? They didn't fall that far, but I like Arkansas.
I like Arkansas too in this one. I don't know. Some they just.
Look at us getting long.
I know.
I'm going
that.
Arkansas
The Big
as
12.
well. So far, Zach's the only one's gone against us. Okay, let's talk about our Super Bowl. We didn't have a lot of college games, so we're going to throw a couple of pro games. Super Bowl rematch, Carolina at Denver.
I like Carolina. I think there's too many question marks with Denver. Denver losing Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler. So.
Yeah, I got to go with Carolina just for the statistics of the whole thing. Like you said, the question marks on Denver's side, even though I'm not a Cam Newton.
I agree. I think Carolina pretty much has their whole team intact from last year.
Yeah,
Denver's
I think it'll
having
be a win for
repeat, so
them.
I'm going with Carolina. This was interesting. A couple of weeks ago, you know, Tennessee Titans coming into the season against the Minnesota Vikings, who, you know, did very well last year, but now Minnesota Vikings at Tennessee, and Minnesota loses its quarterback, what, a week ago?
Yep.
Yeah.
Last week.
So who do you think?
I like Tennessee Titans in this. I think it's going to come down to how best the offensive lines take care of their quarterback. So.
Well, their offense hasn't been the problem this preseason.
Yeah, it has
the
been the
defense.
defense.
But I
that's
think
been the
having
problem. But
struggling-
having, especially with Viking, the Minnesota coming in without a true starting quarterback, where they're supposed to rotate between Sam Bradford, and I'm blanking on who else they're supposed to be.
Maybe that Hill is it Hill?
I can't remember the kid's name, but with them rotating the quarterbacks, yeah, I think that's going to be playing Tennessee's favor. So I like the Titans in this one.
I like the Titans as well, just based on, you know, like you said, they hadn't wanted to tip their hat in the preseason a little bit. I think the defense is maybe a little better than what they've showed in preseason.
Here's hoping.
The offensive line is definitely more improved, and they do have a running game. So I think that's where Tennessee can actually win this game, and they're at home too. So, and they got a lot to prove after two really bad seasons. They got a lot to prove. So I think that's all we'll talk about Titans ball this week. Maybe we'll talk a little more about next week. I want to talk about the AP polls. Now I know you're not a huge fan of the polls. I'm an okay fan of the polls, but when you have an
second
AP
weekend, it's just frustrating because that is.
Well, let me say, Houston jumps 9 spots, and probably deservedly so. They
Exactly,
beat
I agree with
they
that.
number
Knocked off
three
the
team.
number 3 team.
Exactly.
In the country, so.
Wisconsin is now ranked number 10, and went from unranked to now they're number 10 in the
Yeah,
country.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
And then you mentioned Texas right below them, who's at number 11 right now in the AP poll.
It went from unranked to number 11.
Yeah.
That's the AP. Now, the coaches'
Again.
poll was a little more fair, but, and you got Tennessee who wins, but drops 8 spots. And
Yeah,
I
I
think
mean-
they should drop.
They should drop them. I didn't think 8 spots necessarily.
I've seen them dropping a couple spots, not
Yeah,
8
8,
spots.
yeah.
I mean, as you mentioned earlier, Appalachian State went 11-2 last season, and is a notorious spoiler. Just ask Michigan.
I know, right?
So,
And it was exactly, what, 10 years to the day?
Mhm.
Yeah, it was
too?
10 years to the day.
Yeah,
So
they
Georgia
upset.
jumps up 9 spots. Now Georgia's ahead of us.
Well, they played a good hard game against North Carolina, so you know.
Now
I just
TCU struggled. They only dropped 2 spots.
yeah, no, I don't understand that, but
Okay.
it is what it is, and the only thing you can do is just put your big boy panties on and roll out and play this game on Saturday and hope for the best.
Well, and arguably so. You know, I mean, I think Texas A&M is now ranked number 20. They probably should be.
yeah, they should after knocking
So,
off UCLA.
But the riders, check your polls a little more. The coaches, I think, was a little more in line.
Yeah, I like the coach's pulpit.
Let's see what happens this week, and maybe everything will play out in college football. It usually does. So for this week's edition of Extra Point, I guess we're going to check out. If you want to get in touch with Callie, you can.
It's newsgal27 at Twitter. That's
At
that.
Twitter.
On Twitter.
And
At
if you
the
want to get in
Twitter.
touch with Zach, it's at
And-
the Twitter.
Yeah, on Twitter at Zach Birdsong.
So, and if, we're looking for sponsorships for anybody. If you want to be a sponsor, maybe come be a guest pick, give us a call, let us know. You can call one of us up here at the newspaper. I'm Joe Martin, 455-4545.
Yep,
Thank
that's
God
it.
I gave that instead of my actual home number. I appreciate you folks, and let us know how we're doing. Thanks.